The church is richly blessed with many saints, many faithful who followed Christ and lived his life, lived his command to love and to serve God and their neighbor. And among them are the saints that the church celebrates today. Those are Saints Cyril and Methodius, who are biological brothers, both of whom felt an impassioned zeal and desire to spread the good news. They lived in the 9th century. And Saints Cyril and Methodius were inspired to leave their native Greece and to be missionaries in the Sylvanic territory in Eastern Europe when the Duke of Moravia petitioned the Eastern Emperor Michael for political autonomy from the Germanic rule, as well as ecclesiastical autonomy. And that meant that the Sylvanic peoples would need a rite, a liturgy of their own. Taking this challenge to heart, both Saints Cyril and Methodius went to the Sylvanic peoples. And the first thing that Saint Cyril did was create an alphabet for this people. Certainly they were communicative, but they weren't necessarily literate. They didn't have an alphabet. They didn't have any way of reading. So Saint Cyril creates an alphabet which later becomes the Cyrillic alphabet, used in many Eastern languages, in particular, for example, Russia. My friends, what happens for Saint Cyril and Methodius is this. They desire not only to translate the liturgy and the Bible and the Psalms and everything that a people would need to know and to learn and to be able to connect with God and with the faith, the Catholic faith. They wanted to translate it all and inscribe it in this new alphabet, and then obviously to teach those in their company and around them, actually, to be able to read, and therefore to be able to teach and to catechize and to pass on the faith. This was rather unique, if you will, at the time, remembering that most everything in the, at least Western Church, was in Latin, and in the Eastern Church was in Greek. However, exceptions are made, and to reach people where they are, St. Cyril and Methodius, though that they continually had to petition the Pope for approval, they were able to have the Sylvanic liturgy, the liturgy prayed in the native language of the area. They were able to have it approved. St. Cyril predeceases his brother by 16 years, and he spent the last 50 days of his life as a monk. He was known as Constantine before he became a monk, taking the name Cyril. St. Methodius, though, continued his desire to reach people where they were and to preach the good news of Jesus Christ, even at much difficulty for himself. You can imagine the Frankish rulers were rather, to say the least, upset and quite irate, actually, that the Sylvanic peoples were separated from their rule, and that Methodius and his brother Cyril had been catechizing them and doing missionary work, evangelizing them. And that would keep them, therefore, linguistically and liturgically, if you will, apart, even though they were all united to Rome. You know, the unfortunate desire of the human heart to have control and power over others. But nevertheless, my dear friends of Christ, these brothers, these saintly brothers, were saintly not because they wrote a new liturgy in the native language, not because they crafted a new alphabet, but because they lived as Christ commanded them to, with humility, with zeal, and with Christ-like love. And they met people where they were and helped them to know and to love and serve Christ. Saints in the making, you and I, we are all of us called to meet people where they are and to bring the good news, the gospel, to them. Is that not what Jesus Christ himself does for us? Christ comes from heaven. The Son of God comes from heaven to become one like us. He meets us where we are. that we might reach through him to where he is. Let us, you and me, be inspired and be on fire with Christ's own example, fulfilled with the example of St. Cyril and St. Methodius. And let us go out and meet people where they are and reach them where they are. And step by step, bring them closer and closer to Christ. All we have to do is speak their language. And that language, my dear friends of Christ, is the language that all of us speak, the language of love, respect, and dignity of being human persons made in the image of God. We can all of us be fluent in this language, my dear friends of Christ, if you and I make space for grace.